Hi, Eunice, and welcome back to a Yin Yoga podcast. If you are new around here, welcome. If you are a familiar, welcome back. So, before we get into today's episode, I wanted to just mention that for those of you who have been listening for a while, if you've been looking to upgrade your Yin Yoga teacher training, if you've already got one, you want to do more, or if you don't have one yet and you want to start off on a solid footing, that I am, at the time of this recording, I have just decided to increase the length of my Yin training. It has been a 60 plus hour for a couple of years now. And I just have noticed that, especially lately, that the questions from and the collaboration from the group have been so good that I feel like we need more time. So I am going to now increase this and increase the length of the training. So now you're going to get 72 hours with me and then an additional about 25 to 28 hours in homework. That's a guesstimate because some people, do assignments quicker than others. And so in total, that'll be 100 hours. So if you have been looking for sort of a more in-depth training, if you've really been looking for either a solid foundation for your first Yin training, or if you have been wanting to add on more training, if you are a Yin Yoga addict and you want more, I'd encourage you to check that out. The link is always in the show notes to check out what I cover, what the dates of the current course are, because depending on when you're listening to this, I don't know when they will be. But also, there's an opportunity there to get on the wait list. And you can do that all the way at the top of the page. There's a little button there that you can push. You get a free Yin sequence when you sign up, or all the way at the bottom of the page as well. And if you hang out for a couple minutes, there'll be a little polite pop-up that'll whoop come in from the side. And that's also an opportunity to add yourself to the wait list. So when you're on the wait list, not only are you going to get first notice of registration, so before I start posting it on the socials or talking to anybody else about it, waitlist gets it first. That's one thing you get. You also get access to a first 5 of you that sign up get access to a discount code. And then on top of that, on the way to the course opening and the registration opening, you get lots of little Yin Yoga love from me. So you'll get these podcast episodes, you'll get music that I use, you'll get videos that you can practice with yourself, invitations to join me for both my free and my paid Yin classes and workshops. So there's a lot of little things that you'll get there on the way to registration opening. And then when registration opens, you'll get first crack at it, including the first 5 to sign up discount code. So if you've been listening for a while and you've been kind of pondering, doing some more Yin training or your first Yin training, take a moment to just click the link in the show notes and look way up or way down. You can add your name and email there. All right, my friends. Today, I want to talk a little bit about an aspect of Yin Yoga that is rarely talked about. So when I first started doing Yin many, many years ago, I went to Paul's workshop. This was back in 2007, long before I had studied with him in a formal teacher training, but just it was a public workshop. And then I bought his DVD and I went home and I practiced it a lot. And one of the things that DVD says is that, Yin is the quiet yoga or the meditative yoga. And I think that this Yin as we'll just say Yin is the gateway drug, perhaps, to meditation, is an aspect of our Yin practice that doesn't get talked about a lot. Sometimes when I have students come into class that are new to Yin, they, and I say, these are like small meditations, or that Yin Yoga is meditative practice, I can kind of see the look of horror on their face. Because we all have all these messages, right? When we're new to meditating, about meditation, what it is, most of those messages are wrong. And also what it isn't. So when I first started learning to meditate, okay, story time, as I like to say, I'd been teaching yoga for a couple of years, or maybe not even, maybe it had only been 1 year, but somewhere, in the back of my mind, because in my first teacher training, of course, we went over the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and I had learned that like these funny poses we make with our body are to create a body that is able to sit still comfortably in meditation. And that, the asanas were just one little tiny part of what we do in yoga. And that really the big goal is meditation. So I started feeling kind of, to be honest, like a fraud. Because here I am going around starting to teach yoga, saying I'm a yoga teacher, but I wasn't meditating. And of course, I had all kinds of ideas about what meditation meant and what it was and what it wasn't. But either way, I decided, okay, I need to start meditating. I need to learn how to meditate. Didn't really know what that meant, but there we go. I need to learn how to meditate. So I did what one often does. I got on the computers, and I also went to the woo-woo bookshops and stuff, and like looked at posters and wrote down websites. And where I lived, and remember this was also quite a many years ago compared to now. Meditation is so much more common, but most of the places offering meditation were temples, Buddhist temples. And so I would find out what night is their meditation on, and if I could go. If I wasn't teaching, I would sign up for either a beginner meditation program if they had a sort of formalized program, or I would just go if it was more of a drop-in and then try to get some help. And I had some very interesting experiences as I did that. So the first place that I went to was part of a temple. And so they had the men and the women sitting facing opposite walls. So you were on opposite side of the room. And there was the big, beautiful altar there with this amazing Buddha, but you weren't facing it. No, you were just facing a blank wall. And then no instruction, just sit. This is how long we sit for. We ring a bell, and then we do walking meditation. But the walking meditation was more like sprinting around the facility. So needless to say, that one did not stick. In fact, I remember my friend and I that when we left, we were laughing so hard when we left at this like sprinting version of a walking meditation that I almost fell down the stairs. So that was the first place I went. Then I decided, well, that wasn't a fit. Let's try one of the other places. And I found a place that was really near my house, and it seemed really good, but I went there for a while, but we were always sitting in chairs, and the meditation was always guided. And there was a Dharma talk first, which I actually quite liked. But it's like there was no option even to grab a cushion and sit on the floor. And the meditation was guided the whole time. So they weren't really teaching me how to meditate. So I let that one go. I went to another place, and, nothing negative happened per se, but it just wasn't a good fit. And then finally, I went to another temple where I met a man who ended up being my teacher for many years and still would be if I lived in the same province. And he was guiding a beginner meditation course, and it was 6 weeks. And, I'd gone the first week and was sitting and struggling, and I'll talk more about the struggles in a moment. And then at one point he said, and if you find that your mind wanders away and gets pulled away into thinking and planning and writing lists and all of those things, that's normal. Everybody has this tendency. And I was like, what the fuck? Why hasn't anybody told me this? So here I am hopping from meditation technique to meditation technique, guided, not guided, online, audio, take a CD out from the library, go to another temple, shopping around for meditation, thinking that it wasn't, air quotes, working for me because my mind was too busy, only to find out, oh, everybody's mind is busy in meditation, that this is actually part of being human. And wow, was I ever more able to settle in than to learning that practice? You see, because I thought that you would just sit cross-legged and you'd find some ancient mudra and you'd close your eyes and focus on your breath, and then bada bing, bada boom, your mind would be clear and you would be on the road to enlightenment. But no, really what happens is you sit, especially when you're new to sitting on the floor, and you're uncomfortable, your back gets tired, your hips ache, your knees ache, you get fidgety, you're bored, your mind is thinking, you have to reestablish your posture multiple times because you start slouching. So all of these things are what happens when you first start to learn to meditate. You get frustrated, you get impatient, you get sleepy, you fall asleep, all of these things. And they're all normal and human. So this is why this man became my teacher for many years, because he was able to take what felt like to me some of this kind of esoteric stuff and make it really clear and really practical. So I want to talk a little bit about this sort of meditated aspect of yin and how for ourselves as practitioners or for students, yin yoga can be a little bit of the gateway drug to meditation. And let's face it, all of us could use a little more be still, sit down, and shut up in the world. Okay, so is yin yoga a gateway to meditation? I think so. Often, though, when I tell my students that yin's nickname is the meditative yoga, like I mentioned, I get this look of horror and shock, like somehow I tricked them into meditating. Here they were, thought they were coming for this yoga practice to get more flexible, and now someone's talking to them about meditation. So the fact that meditation's become so separate from what most of society thinks of as yoga practice is already horribly unfortunate, and maybe a rant that we don't need to get into. But, originally the yoga practices were designed to create a body that was stable to sit in meditation. And unfortunately, that aspect of yoga, as it got, imported to the West, has been thrown in the trash. And now it's all just about, getting your bikini body and blah, blah, blah. So whether or not it's accurate to say that all yoga could have meditation in it, it most of the time doesn't. And so when a student hears meditation, they often panic and start looking for the door. But here's the thing. In our busy, rushed, multitasking culture, we just don't value sitting still and focusing on one thing at a time. Not only do we not practice it, but most people don't even see the value in doing that. But meditation often isn't what you may think as a teacher listening to this, or if you're a member of the public, or it's not what you may think, and it may not be what your students think. So most people think, like I did, that a meditation practice is sitting cross-legged, picking a mudra, closing your eyes, and bam, blissful, thoughtless awareness. Nope. So when I started to meditate, as I mentioned, I was shocked and horrified that when I sat down and closed my eyes, there was a circus going on in my mind. And so I thought, I must be doing it wrong. I just obviously need a different style of meditation. This kind of meditation isn't, air quotes, working for me, so I need to find another one. And so I tried another style and another style and another. And luckily I'm tenacious because finally, as I mentioned, in that beginner class, my teacher said, if your mind wanders into thinking and planning, that's normal. It happens to everyone. And then I realized that I wasn't alone. Everybody's back was kind of aching, hips were kind of sore, knees were kind of a thing. Their mind was going crazy or they were falling asleep. Turns out I'm not that unique nor special. Nope. We all have this busy brain. It's human. It's normal. And so I just kept studying meditation, but I made very little, air quotes, progress until, dun, 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 enter Yin Yoga. So what I noticed is that when I entered a yin shape for a few minutes, it was an opportunity to practice meditation. And then we'd come out and we'd enter a new shape. And that would be another opportunity to try again, to practice meditation. And these bite-sized meditations, for 3 to 5 minutes at a time, often feel more doable and accessible than trying to sit for 20 to 45 minutes straight. Of course, the mind still wanders, but it feels less daunting and a little easier than a longer sit. This small, regular practice can kind of chip away at the mind, and it often adds up to the mind slowly being less rebellious. And this is how we develop this in our yin practice. So rather than coming into the shape and just letting your mind run amok and the thinking, the planning, the list writing, the analyzing, all the things, rather than that happening, when the mind goes off on a tangent, which of course it will because you're human and this is normal, we can just gently refocus it on an anchor. Now, there's different styles of meditation out there, and there's probably more than this podcast can go into, but a lot of them, especially for beginners, are concentration techniques, or an anchor is another way to think of that. So the mind runs away and you come and bring it back to this one simple thing. And there's so many ways that you could anchor the mind, but I'll share a few beginner-friendly ones that I share in my classes with my students and also in my own practice. So a word or a phrase. So something that's meaningful for you. It could be something you're hoping to get from your practice or something you're trying to keep top of mind in your life. Often called your sankalpa, which is unfortunately often translated as intention, but actually like heartfelt desire or heartfelt resolve might be a bit more accurate. So you could use what's called a sankalpa. If you've studied with a teacher in depth and they've given you a mantra, you could use a mantra. Traditionally, historically, you wouldn't just kind of pick up a yoga book and pick a mantra that you liked and do that. That would be given to you by a teacher. So a word or a phrase, whether that's mantra or whether it's just a sankalpa, that can be a way to anchor your mind and practice meditation to bring your mind back to that word or phrase. So how I describe this often to my students is that this word or phrase is sort of like if you imagine a record or an album or vinyl, depending what generation you are, and your vinyl is playing along, it's doing its thing, everything's going well, and then all of a sudden it gets stuck in a scratch and it's on like repeat, 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 right? So using this word or phrase is sort of like picking the needle up and beginning again. So when you're focusing on being present and then the mind wanders away, when you notice it, pause. You can say that word or phrase to yourself and bring it back. Or if you were using a mantra, maybe given to you by a teacher, you might use that mantra repeatedly throughout the whole meditation. So you could use a word or a phrase or a mantra. Again, if you are interested in mantra meditation, I highly recommend picking up some training with a skilled teacher. You can watch your breath. So the great thing about the breath is it's always with us and nobody has to know we're doing it. So you could watch the rise and the fall of your belly as you breathe. And you could either picture this or you could focus on the physical sensation of it, whatever makes more sense for you. And it could be the belly or the ribs or the chest or even the nostrils. I find the nostrils tricky, but some people might find that a little easier. And you're just literally going to be aware of the breath, following it as it moves in and out of one of those areas of your body. And then, of course, your mind will wander. And when it does, you come back to that technique. One of the most simple ways of meditation, of beginning a concentration practice, which can lead to a meditative state sometimes if you're lucky, that I was introduced to by my teacher, the one I mentioned, was breath counting. So similar to watching the breath in the belly, so you're still aware of the breath perhaps physically in your body, but then you're adding a count to that rise and fall. So inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, inhale, exhale 3, etc., etc. There's no goal number. It's not like you get a trophy when you get somewhere. And when you notice that your mind wanders, you just begin again at 1. I had a student once who told me that she used this technique, but she swapped out the breath count for the alphabet because she was number averse, which I thought was very clever. Okay, so that might be something. Breathing into areas of sensation. So as you come into your yin shape and you found sort of your sweet spot or your working position, that sort of 50 to 60% where you're feeling sensation, you could send your breath directly into the area that you are feeling, almost as if you could breathe directly into that area, bypassing your nose, your mouth, your lungs, your trachea, and breathing into that spot. So that's an option. And then sometimes there's what I often think of as big sky awareness, or some people might call mindfulness. Now, as I mentioned before, for beginners, or if your mind is quite busy, the techniques I gave you above that are a bit more of a concentration technique are usually helpful at the start. But sometimes over time, with practice or just some days, we can notice that we reach this big sky awareness, where we are sort of aware of everything in the present moment. Sounds, sensations, smells, the air in your skin, the weight of your body on the earth, but in a very open and kind of gentle, soft way. You're not kind of grasping or getting stuck on repetitive thought loops. It's just wide open, present moment awareness. Sort of like if you were lying on the earth on a warm day, watching the clouds float by, but without making animal shapes or telling stories about each cloud. From my experience, this big sky awareness, aka mindfulness, is kind of rare and fleeting. But if you do find that at some point in your practice, then you can let go of these more specific anchoring techniques and float in that mindfulness for a while, for however long it lasts. And if you find that the mind starts to kick up a storm again and gets busy, well, you could return to an anchor for a while. The thing I see most often with students, other than thinking that they're the only ones who can't meditate, oh, all these other people, they've got their shit figured out, but me, no, I'm complicated. So that is one thing that students think often, and I used to think too. But the other thing that I notice is just this level of frustration with how busy the mind is. So please be gentle with yourself. In this practice, my teacher always used to say, and I remember I just wanted to hug him the first time I heard it. In this practice, we're not trying to stop thinking. And to say that a couple more times. In this meditation practice, we're not trying to stop thinking. In fact, the best way to think is to try not to think. Instead, we are redirecting the mind when it goes off course from what we were choosing to pay attention to, whether that's your word, your phrase, your breath, or sort of present moment awareness and mindfulness. So I often think of my mind like a 2-year-old because it helps to soften the judging aspect of my mind, the part of me that's a little bit hard on myself because I don't have this all figured out yet. And I'm clearly not enlightened yet, despite all the practice. So, an inner 2-year-old. Imagine, if you will, you're walking down the street in a quiet neighborhood on a warm summer day with a 2-year-old. It wouldn't take long, likely, before you would get distracted repeatedly along the way. They would want to look at every flower, every rock, every caterpillar, every insect would be a distraction from the walk. And my hope is that you wouldn't get impatient with that small one and yank on their hand, insisting that they hurry up and let's get back to the walk. We have places to be, things to do. No, instead, you would just acknowledge the distraction to this little one. You would say, Oh, look, that is a pretty flower. Okay, come this way. Let's continue. So try to have that same compassion and patience with yourself. The mind will wander. This is normal. And it's to be expected. It's amazing how much easier meditation practice gets, whether you're doing it in your yin class or on a formal meditation practice, sitting your butt on a cushion. It's amazing how much better it gets when you let go of the expectation to have this mind that is clear and void of all thoughts. And you just realize, I'm going to get distracted here, but I know some skills to help me when I do. So, please be gentle and compassionate with yourself. The mind will wander away. It's normal. It's to be expected. When it does, you just gently return it to your anchor or to present moment awareness. There's a reason that this is called yoga practice or meditation practice. It's because it's a practice, and any new skill is going to take practice, repetition, and patience. So I know that I have practiced my yin yoga in a really distracted way, right? Where I'm just sort of, daydreaming, thinking, planning. I'm making the shapes with my body. I'm setting a timer, and then I'm just letting the mind do what it does. So I've done that. I've done that a lot, resisting the urge to pick up my phone. And I've also done my yin practice where I am dedicated and committed, and I bring my mind back each time it wanders away to whatever anchor I'm using for my practice. And I can tell you that the second one bears far more fruit, not only for your mental state, for your nervous system, and I would argue for the physicality of your body. When you can be present to what is happening in the moment, your practice will be way more healing, and you will get more insights into not only your mind, but also your body and your spirit. So I can tell you from experience that one has way more benefits when, not just when I'm on the yoga mat, but also when I'm off the yoga mat. So if you are a yin yoga lover or completely yin intimidated, I hope that those techniques will help you to settle into practice a little bit more. Sometimes having these sort of more concrete anchoring techniques can be helpful. I would love to know from you in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can let me know in the comments. If you are on Spotify, we have a new comment feature now on Spotify. Or if you're on my blog, you can also add comments there. So I would love to know from you, what has your experience been like with meditation and meditation practice? And has yin yoga helped you with that? Have you found that your yin yoga practice has helped you to gradually branch out into a more formalized seated practice? Because, as I said before, yin yoga can be a gateway drug to meditation. So I'd love to know more about your journey with meditation. Have you tried it? Did you fall into any of these stereotypes that I mentioned where you thought that your mind was supposed to be clear? You were just going to sit cross-legged and be enlightened, bam, just like that. Any of that come up for you? I know it did for me. And I'm so grateful that I found my teacher. And I have been on and off with my meditation practice, especially over the COVID times. I switched my meditation practice to all metta practice, all loving kindness. I've done a whole episode on that. I'll leave the link in the show notes, or you can just find it on my blog or wherever you're listening to this. So in times of stress or strife, whether that's personally for me or just the world, I have repeatedly used my metta practice as my concentration technique, because those are sort of like words that you're putting out there into the world. So again, I've done a whole episode on metta, and you can check that out if you're interested in a loving kindness practice. And recently, I have just committed to taking a course. It's a teacher training, like a facilitation course on mindful meditation, which was starting soon. So that's another way that I'm kind of branching out and also reestablishing my commitment to my formal seated practice. And over the years, I have offered a course called Meditation 101, which is suitable for the public or teachers. If you really need a way to kind of establish a meditation practice sort of from the ground up, then you can reach out to me. It's not online now. I don't have any dates right now in my mind, but by the time you listen to it, there could be. And if there is, I'll put a link in the show notes. But if not, you can always reach out to me on Instagram, or send me an email on my contact form on my website and let me know that that's something you'd be interested in, and I'll add you to the short list. Okay, friends, I hope that you find this helpful. And most importantly, I hope that this has allowed you to cut yourself some slack, right? Please don't be harsh with yourself in meditation. We want to find what the Buddha would have called the middle way. Laying in your poses or seated on your cushion, just letting the mind do what it does with no discipline whatsoever, not helpful. We're already real good at this, right? I'm sure, right? You're really good at thinking, planning, list writing, all the things. I have like a master's degree in it by now. So not helpful to have our practice be that, but also not helpful to be harsh or judgmental or critical with yourself. What's wrong with you? Why can't your mind be still? Blah, 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 which I did for a while. So that's also not helpful because that's just going to make you think even more. It's also going to jack up your nervous system, which is going to make settling even harder. So can we find the middle way? The mind wanders away. We acknowledge this is normal and human, and oh, there it goes again. And with gentle dedication, we bring it back to whatever anchor you're using or whatever technique you're using. Gentle, patient, dedicated, compassionate presence. Again and again and again. The mind wanders, you return it back home to your body, to your breath, to this moment. Okay, my friends, I hope that you find that helpful. Please give me some feedback in the comments, either on my blog, or you can also contact me on Instagram or YouTube or Spotify. Apple doesn't have a comment option, but if you are on Apple, you can just message me on Instagram at Nick Danu Yoga or at Yin Yoga Podcast. Both are in the show notes. And until next time, my friends, bye for now.